Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a pretty brutal daily reality of ancient human survival. We usually think of our ancestors as these independent pioneers, conquering the globe with sheer willpower and brainpower. But honestly, their success and our very existence relied completely on a hidden infrastructure. We're talking about animals.
Imagine waking up tomorrow to a world with only plants, just a terrifying amount of silence. No cows, no horses, no bees, no fish. How long do you really think you'd last? You might think, oh, I'll just forage, I'll figure it out. But without oxen to plow your fields or bees to pollinate your crops, those optimistic survival plans would very quickly turn into a slow, hungry, and very cold death.
And we're not just talking about some fun hypotheticals here. This is literally what ancient humans faced every single day for hundreds of thousands of years. Absolutely everything ancient humans built, everything they ate, every winter they survived, was completely and utterly dependent on animals. And it goes so much deeper than just hunting them for meat.
All right, let's dive right in. Section 1. More than just meat. Focusing only on meat is kind of like saying electricity is only good for charging your phone. You're missing 99% of the picture. Our human brains are basically calorie-destroying monsters. They need 20% of your total energy just to sit there and think. For early humans, plant foraging was way too seasonal and wildly unreliable to provide the dense fat and protein needed to fuel that kind of intelligence. To build and run a brain this size, they absolutely needed animals.
So, that brings us to the fat question. Animal fat wasn't just some macronutrient. It was absolute survival currency against a harsh winter. When plant life died off, fat was what kept the human immune system from completely collapsing. Hundreds of thousands of years before we had sophisticated tools, early humans were cracking open bones to get to the marrow. It was essentially nature's butter, a life-saving, highly calorie-dense source of nutrition.
Section 2. The ancient hardware store. Let's see how this builds, because early humans didn't just eat the meat. They engineered essential survival tools from every single part of the animal to avoid insane wastage. Think about the terrifying cascade effect if you lose literally one material, sinew. Without animal tendons, you have no thread to hold your clothes together. You have no bowstrings. Without a bow, your hunting range drops dramatically. And without that range, your food options completely collapse. Losing just the tendons could wipe out an entire tribe.
You know, stone tools get all the historical press. But bone tools? They are criminally underrated. Our ancestors engineered incredibly sophisticated needles out of bird bones, fishing hooks out of fish bones, and sharp blades from animal ribs. The pure precision required for early human clothing and fishing came directly from the animals themselves.
The whole animal tech tree is honestly surprising. Plant leaves and bark aren't going to insulate you from a freezing winter. Animal hides did. Stomachs were engineered into pouches to transport water over massive distances, or even to boil food with hot stones. Animal fat lamps were essentially the first electricity, extending productive human hours way past sunset so society could actually function. And manure? It was the civilization-critical fertilizer that literally saved agricultural societies from mass starvation.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Domestication Revolution.
Around 10,000 to 15,000 years ago, we hit a huge turning point. We stopped just hunting animals, and we started keeping them. This strategic pivot happened in waves. First dogs, then goats and sheep around 10,000 years ago, and eventually horses. Goats became the ancient Swiss Army knife, giving us a continuous, renewable source of milk, meat, hide, and horn. You didn't have to kill the animal to survive anymore. Because of this, animals literally became wealth. Across ancient Sumeria, Egypt, Ireland, and India, your herd was your bank account. Cattle were your currency.
But let's look at the very first domesticated animal, the dog. Descending from gray wolves, domesticating them gave humans an incomparable advantage. A dog's nose acted as this ancient biological security camera and a highly advanced hunting tracker. Groups of humans that had dogs were dramatically more effective at surviving than those who didn't. It was a total game changer.
And this brilliantly illustrates the power of the horse. An army walking on foot might cover, 25 to 30 kilometers a day? But an army on horseback? They're covering 100 kilometers or more. Horses became the ancient world's tanks. They allowed Mongol armies to move with lightning speed, they powered the 2,500-kilometer Persian Royal Road, and draft horses drastically sped up farming. More farming meant more food, more people, and much larger civilizations.
Section 4. The Unsung Animal Engines.
Beyond the big, dramatic beasts, we owe a massive debt to the tiny, quiet workers. Let's start with insects. If you thought humans only kept bees for honey, you are missing an ancient industrial miracle here. Beeswax was incredibly versatile. It was used for sealing and waterproofing wood, as a vital lubricant for tools, for long-lasting candles, and, crucially, for wax tablets. These are basically the ancient world's dry erase boards. They form the backbone of administrative record-keeping long before paper ever existed.
But speaking of honey, it comes with this built-in magic trick. It literally never spoils. Archaeologists have actually found 3,000-year-old honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that is still perfectly edible. No way, right? But it was more than just magic food storage. The ancient Egyptians used honey on wounds as a highly effective antibiotic, thousands of years before penicillin was ever discovered. Let's look at a few more of these micro-engines. Silkworms, literally tiny moth larvae, produced threads that connected China to Rome. They created the Silk Road, moving ideas and tech across entire continents. Carrier pigeons were ancient telecommunications. During World War I, a pigeon named Cherami actually saved 200 trapped soldiers despite being shot in the chest. And oxen and donkeys? They were the trucks and forklifts of the ancient world. They moved the pyramid blocks. They built our physical infrastructure. Finally, Section 5, From Partners to Gods. When your survival depends entirely on something, you don't just respect it, you elevate it to the sacred. And these sacred connections span the entire globe. Egyptian gods represented vital survival forces. You had Sobek the crocodile for the Nile, Apis the bull for agriculture. In Hinduism, protecting the cow was a highly rational economic policy because a cow was a living economic machine. Norse gods used ravens as a mythological surveillance network. And for the Native Americans of the Great Plains, the buffalo is the center of their entire material and spiritual world. Deliberately wiping them out was an act of civilizational destruction. 300,000. Think about that number. For over 300,000 years of Homo sapiens' existence, every single one of your ancestors was in a direct, daily, life-or-death relationship with animals just to stay alive. Knowing how to track them, use their hides, and render their fat wasn't some fun trivia fact. It was the required curriculum for survival. So the crucial point here is that our modern comfort, it's an incredibly tiny blip in human history. Today, your food comes wrapped in plastic, your clothes are made of synthetics, and your light comes from a wire in the wall. You could go your whole life without ever directly relying on a living animal. But that disconnect is embarrassingly recent. I want to leave you with a final thought for today's explainer. The first alliance humans ever made wasn't with each other, it was with the animals. Every time you've ever been warm, fed, or comfortable enough to sit back and ponder the universe, you are standing on the shoulders of this ancient, unpaid debt. Without them, we simply wouldn't be here. So the next time you turn on a light, put on a coat, or open your fridge, ask yourself, what invisible infrastructures are you entirely dependent on today? Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.